You ever thought about leaving your hometown for greener pastures? It's not all that uncommon today to relocate, either for work purposes, lifestyle purposes, or all of the above. Well, if you're into cars, here's 5 states you should definitely not move to. Now, I know pretty darn well that there's real car enthusiasts in every single state in this union. So if you live in one of these states and you're a real car enthusiast, that's alright. I believe you. Number 5, California. A lot of people are gonna wonder why this isn't number 1, but you gotta remember that this still makes California the 46th worst state you could possibly live in if you like cars. Although I hate to admit it, California does actually have a lot of things going for it, and that's the reason I can't in good conscience make this number 1 on the list. Now, between Thunder Hill, Infineon Raceway, Willow Springs, and Laguna Seca, there's just too many racetracks in this state to write it off completely. And let's be honest, it does have some of the best weather for driving you can possibly find just about anywhere, and it does have some of the best driving roads you are ever going to find. Now, because of that good weather, that means it's also relatively easy to pick up a clean, old, rust-free car. So if you're trying to pick up a nice clean shell to get a car project started, this is not a bad state for it. Not to mention, California does have some of the premier car shows, car events, rallies, and let's not forget Monterey Car Week. I think you get the idea. It would be stupid to say California is the worst state to be into cars. However, there are still many strikes against this place, earning it number 5 on this list. California's extremely high cost of living makes it difficult to have a lot of leftover money to spend on cars. Although their economy is pretty good and it's easy enough to find a job, I think you'll find the money you spend on rent very much cuts into your turbo budget. Not that you'd realistically be able to install an aftermarket turbo kit on your car in this state because it's most likely illegal. There are some smog legal turbo kits, but only for a select few cars and using select few parts. All this to say, California has the strictest emissions laws in the country. The part of California's emissions code that makes it worse than any other state in the country is the fact that it never expires. You see, in a lot of other states, when a car turns 25 years old or so, at that point it becomes exempt from emissions testing, meaning it's a classic car, you can do pretty much whatever you want with it and they understand. Not the case in California. Any car newer than 1975 still has to be smog, so if you're unlucky enough to own a 1980s Chevrolet Camaro or something like that, you can pretty much forget about uncorking that thing, which it desperately needs. These laws ain't real kind to the JDM guys either, who could pretty much forget about swapping 2JZs and RB26s into cars that never came with those engines. Now, while you could register your car in another state, I don't really recommend that because if you get pulled over, the policeman might not take too kindly to that. There's another common myth about California emissions, which is that if you know the smog guy and you're friends with him, he can just write you a pass and you're good to go no matter how illegal your car might be. Now, this may have been the case at one point in time, but it is no longer the case now. I can pretty much guarantee you that much. If your car is 1996 or newer, i.e. is OBD2, your scan will go straight to the state. In other words, he's not just hooking up the OBD2 scanner and giving you a thumbs up. I wish it was still like that, but unfortunately it isn't. It doesn't really matter what the smog guy says, it more matters what the state says. So when the smog guy scans your car and the state sees that you have your rear O2 sensors turned off, they're not going to pass you, unfortunately. Now, if you have an older car, for example, one built between 1975 and 1995, that unfortunately means you still have to pass a smog sniffer test and visual inspection. To be really honest with you, this kinda sucks because nothing sounds better than a set of long tube headers on a V8 engine, but in California you can't do that. Now, for you turbo hot hatch guys, if you got an aftermarket downpipe, it's the same thing. You're still not gonna pass, I hate to tell you. It's unfortunate that the people of California clearly love cars, yet have a government that clearly hates them. Now, I'm sorry, but this is not a political channel. That said, it would be stupid to attempt to have an intelligent conversation about which which states are good or bad for car enthusiasts and just conveniently ignore policy. On that note, California does have a pretty high gas tax, which really only seems to affect the poor and middle class, really. It makes it more expensive to buy gas, plain and simple, that's what it does. Now, there's many reasons they do this, but one of them is to discourage people from buying gas-hoggy cars. It's to encourage people to go buy Toyota Priuses and stuff like that. Not exactly something Car Guy really wants. Honestly, I could go on all day about California and all the anti-car things they do over there. But at some point, this rant has to come to an end so I can move on and talk about some other states, so I'll leave you with this. California has some of the worst gas in the country. Tops out at 91 octane. Now, cars these days leave the factory ready for 91 octane because that has to be kind of the minimum. That's the lowest common denominator. California is literally dragging the performance of cars downward. California hates cars. Number 4, New Jersey. Like California, New Jersey has a thriving car scene. There's even a couple of racetracks. There's a lot of people who live in New Jersey who like cars. That said, it is still far from an ideal place to be interested in cars. New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the Union. It's mostly suburbs of New York City and Philadelphia. Because of that, there's a lot of traffic. Be prepared to sit around not going anywhere, not having any fun. There's also not too many great driving roads because of that. It's a pretty flat state, there's not much terrain, and it's mostly paved over. And if you think you're gonna just go out with your buddies to Mexico down New Jersey Turnpike, I have some bad news for you. It's one of the most patrolled highways in the country. They got speed traps and tolls. If you're interested in cars and you live in New Jersey, you're better off leaving. In fact, many people are. The state has a net negative migration right now. The winters are cold, they do get some snow, and they do salt the roads. So cars do have a proclivity to rust. A lot of New Jersey residents, by their own admission, say that the roads are in terrible condition for the most part. They got a lot of potholes and cracks and stuff like that. Oh, and you can't pump your own gas. I remember my first time trying to fill up in New Jersey. I tried to fill up my own car, thought it was just like any other state because I figured we're in America and I can fill my own gas. And no, some guy comes out from behind the building hollering at me saying, I don't even know what. To be honest with you, I couldn't understand him, but he wasn't happy with me. I thought I was about to get robbed or something. Number 3, Hawaii. Don't get me wrong, Hawaii is a beautiful state, but it's a tough place if you're into cars. You're way out on a little island, so getting parts for your car out there is sometimes kind of difficult. Every time I go to Hawaii, the modified cars mostly seem to be Japanese imports. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, it's just that if you like variety, you're not going to find it here. Imagine trying to get parts for an old Lotus Carlton out in Hawaii. Good luck to you. Hawaii does have a couple of drag strips, but they don't really have any circuits, so if you're into that kind of driving, you're not gonna find it in Hawaii. There are some nice twisty roads, but I don't recommend trying to actually drive fast on them. Going fast isn't a thing in Hawaii, you don't do that. You're just gonna end up crashing and someone's gonna get hurt. All you're gonna end up doing is making yourself look like a dumbass mainlander who thinks he's Mario Andretti. Like the other 2 states, Hawaii is very expensive to live in. I think you'll find the cost of living cuts into your car budget quite a bit. Number 2, New York. I'm just gonna drop the southern accent for this part because I'm from New York and I feel like I'm qualified to speak on this. Downstate New York, which comprises of New York City's 5 boroughs, Westchester County, in my opinion, and Long Island, is one of the most expensive places to live in the country. It doesn't help that the cost to insure a car in this area is absolutely through the roof. If you live within the 5 boroughs, you're probably not going to have parking at your place. And if you do have parking at your place, you're going to be spending probably another few $100s per month for that privilege. The only alternative really is parking on the street, which, oh boy, I do not recommend that. Not if you care about your car. I mean, I guess you could go put one of those bumper diaper things on the back of your car, but honestly, that's like running into a lion's den with a helmet. Naked. Congrats, at least part of you is protected. This city does tear up your car. It just does. Now, if you have the financial means and don't mind living an hour from work each way, then yes, you could go live out in Long Island or Westchester County, but just know that those places have some of the highest property taxes in the world. We're talking $10,000+ per year in property taxes, and that's for a crappy rundown house that might not even have a garage. You know, I was one of those guys. I was like, oh, it's fine, I'm just gonna move to Westchester. So I was shopping around in, New Rochelle, and I was looking at this house, and I could afford the principal and interest. I was like, oh yeah, cool, buy a house, be a homeowner. Nope, $18,000 a year for the property taxes. That's almost what I pay in rent right now. And don't think it gets any better once you go upstate. Upstate has one of the worst economies in the country. It's been compared to a third world country. I think that's a little unfair, but you get where I'm going with this. If you're gonna get into cars, you should probably live somewhere with decent job opportunities and a decent economy so you can make something of yourself and then use your income to purchase cars and car parts and that kind of thing. Well, I don't know what you're gonna do for work upstate because all the jobs seem to be leaving. Upstate New York also has some of the worst weather I have ever experienced in my life. We're talking minus 20 degrees, snow up to your hips, flooding. I mean, it is really bad. Not exactly the kind of weather that makes you want to hop into your S2000, drop the top, and hit a back road. Not that you would want to own a Honda upstate because it will definitely rust to pieces. They salt the roads up here. They salt them really heavy. It's not all that uncommon to walk around in a town like Albany and see cars that are only a few years old with massive rust holes in them. That's how harsh the environment is up here. Now that extremely harsh environment takes a toll on those roads. The roads are bad. Really bad. We're talking potholes, flooding, cracks, big old branches sticking out. And honestly, it wouldn't be such a problem if the state actually did something about it, but they don't. I mean, not really. They always claim to be out of money.
Yeah, sorry guys, we're kind of strapped for cash at the moment. We can't afford to fix the roads, but
And then there's New York State inspection. See, New York State inspects your car every single year to make sure it's safe for their roads. But the problem is their roads aren't safe for your car. So you have these messed up, pothole-ridden roads wreaking havoc on your car's suspension, which they check every year, and then if it's not up to their standards, they say, sorry buddy, you gotta go fix your car. You pay for the inspection, by the way. It's not free. The whole thing is a massive scam. If you're picking up a car that's older than 10 years old, I can pretty much guarantee you there's gonna be rust on it. Unless it came from down south or something, it's gonna be a little rusty, especially if it was a daily driver. All I have to say is, get that penetrating oil ready. It's gonna be fun working on it. Number 1, Illinois. Illinois has seen pretty much nothing but economic decline for the last few years. The jobs are leaving and so are the people. Like I said earlier, if you're into cars, you need a nice stable income for the most part, so I don't know how you're going to achieve that in a state that's literally going backwards. Geographically, Illinois is pretty flat. There's not a lot of twisty back roads or anything like that, so if that's what you're into, the land of Lincoln is not for you. If you live anywhere near the Chicagoland area, you got a pretty annoying emissions setup as well. Any car newer than 1996 needs to get tested. Every single year. Now in a couple years here, 1996 cars are going to turn 25 years old, and many states they'll be emissions exempt. Not in Chicago. Now you could potentially register your car to an address outside of Chicago if you know somebody. I don't know how all of that works, and I honestly would not advise you to do that. I'm sure the state has thought that through and they have some measure in place to prevent you from doing that and getting away with it. At that point, it's just a matter of if you get caught or not. When you combine that with the fact that Illinois has some of the harshest weather in the lower 48, I think you can see why it's not ideal for a car lover. They get a lot of snow, they get a lot of salt, and they get a lot of rust. If I'm shopping for a car and I see on the Carfax that it used to be registered in the state of Illinois, I turn and walk away. Every time. So, in conclusion, it's flat, it's boring, it's rusty, there's no jobs, the weather's terrible, and if you do move there and end up making some close friends, they will eventually move, like everybody else in Illinois is doing. Lastly, you have to live in the middle of nowhere if you want to actually modify your car. Doesn't sound like a lot of fun if you ask me. If you stayed to the end of this video, I gotta say I admire you for not having the attention span of a goldfish like everybody else has these days. To be honest with you, I like you for that, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, because you're just the kind of person I want around these parts. Hope I didn't offend anybody. Like I said, there's car enthusiasts in every single state, and I understand that some of these states have some great car scenes, and there's nothing wrong with living there, but I do think there's better places to live if you're into cars. Let me know in the comments section what you want me to do next, and y'all have a good day now.